we are right at 2 p.m. So welcome back to The Path, Walking in Board Balance. I hope you all had a great little break. So as we dive into our second session, so our second stop is at Achievement, the BOD role in AAAHC preparation. Awesome. All right, can we go to next slide, please? Next slide. All right, so as shown as the agenda, we will begin our presentation just shortly and followed by a fun Jeopardy game. And then time permitting, we will move into a Q&A session followed by information about the third and last session and another 10-minute break. Next slide, please. So our next presenter is our director, wonderful director of technical assistance at NCUI, Zepporah Fuller. Zepporah Fuller Diné has more than 17 years of experience working within for-profit, nonprofit, private, specialty, tribal, and government healthcare delivery systems. She is committed to be a servant leader for Indigenous communities and helping organizations build internal capacity to provide excellent quality care that our Indigenous peoples greatly need and deserve. She is an experienced certified professional in healthcare quality, CPHQ, and has served in a plethora of roles that include front office management, health information management, data informatics management, accreditation preparation, billing and coding, and quality improvement and assurance. A mouthful and a wonderful plethora of items. She has facilitated multidisciplinary performance improvement activities and trainings within Indian Health Service hospitals, urban Indian organizations, and federally qualified health center settings. My apologies. Let us welcome Zepporah with a celebration emoji in the chat box. All right, everyone, let's party with Zepporah. Woo! Here we go.
Yay! Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Divya. And hi to everybody in the audience. Definitely feel free to chime in, come off of camera as well. So I'm hoping that this section can be as informal as it could be. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, I will ask to just hold it or just put your question in the chat box. There's going to be quite a bit of information here today, especially for new board members. And you guys will have access to a copy of the slide deck as well. So I just wanted to preface this with that. Next slide, please. So a couple of our objectives today is to learn how to develop and design an effective Board of Directors AAAHC preparation plan using AAAHC standards. Another objective is to strategically use an urban Indian organization facility assessment to build your site visit preparation training for board members and to understand and anticipate the day of AAAHC site visit experience. Next slide, please. So we're going to go ahead and just start at the very beginning and go over some of the board materials and resources that are available to you and that your UIO Board of Directors support staff can obtain for you. So you want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date versions. As we all know, we do have several regulatory agencies that often come through with updated manuals, updated site visit protocols as well. So I've gone ahead and listed just a couple of the more common ones. Of course, it's the AAAHC standards manual, the most recent version being version 41. AAAHC has moved away from using year identifiers. So before it used to be the 2020 AAAHC manual, the 1996 or 97 version manual, if you will. So now they're numbering version 41 and so on. We also do have the HRSA compliance manual and HRSA site visit protocol, two separate manuals for those facilities that are Section 330 grantees. There's also the Office of Urban Indian Health Programs manual, which the last time that was updated was in 2013. However, the IHS is currently working on updating that. And thank you to those who did attend our little focus group regarding the OUIHP manual so that we can help submit comments over to IHS on how to improve and update theirs. There's also the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities, known as CARF. They have also released their 2021 manual, which expires on June 30th of this year. And so I just wanted to ask the question to you all to see what other resources does your team use, and if you could place that in the chat box. And I'll give you about maybe 20 seconds to enter that, just because we've got a lot of content to cover. But what are some other resources that your teams use? And if yours is not listed here, feel free to place that particular manual in the chat box as well. Okay, I don't see anything coming through, but still, again, feel free to go ahead and chime in if you are still currently typing. Next slide, please. So I want to just get a good gauge as to what your board member onboarding training looks like. And so the first question that I want to pose to you all is, do you all have a formal process for onboarding new members? And please feel free to come off of mute if you are a UIO organization, or if you're a board member as well, if you've gone through on board of directors training for your organization. Thank you, Kathleen. I do see your chat in the chat box stating nope, but we are working on it. I'm hoping that this training can help offer you with a good outline of what to include in that training. Jonas, thank you for that. Yay, you guys do have a training. That's awesome. Gold stars for your team. Woohoo! Anybody else? Do you all have a formal process for onboarding new board of directors members? We can go ahead and go down to question 2. So talk to me a little bit about how new members are. Thank you, Laura. We do now. That's awesome. How are your new members oriented to bylaws and policies? And again, feel free to come off of mute or feel free to chat in the chat box. So again, the question is, how are your new members oriented to bylaws and policies? And I'll just give you guys a couple of seconds to chime into the chat box, or again, you can come off of mute and chime into the conversation as well. We love verbal engagement. Okay, so Jonas stated, we hold a retreat with older and new members and go over the bylaws, etc. That's great. That's a really good way to also get that team dynamic and in-person group conversations and discussions going as well. Any other organizations or board members want to share about how you're oriented to bylaws and policies? Okay, we can go ahead and move on to the board training. So a couple of the ways in which I used to work at Native Health, a couple of the ways in which we oriented board members to some of the, I guess, expectations, some of the higher level documentation that we use in site visits. And thank you, Laura. I want to acknowledge your chat in the chat box. We hold an orientation with the new board member and provide them with a binder that contains that information. That's awesome. Those are really great tips. So as you'll know, and I'm sure Laura and Jonas can also help me present here, Board of Directors training should also include a manuals overview for any regulatory agency with regard to their specific role. So I know for the AAAHC manual, it's a little over 200 pages long. Board members don't necessarily need to read the entire thing, just know what's pertinent to them. So the UIO staff members should really try and hone down what is specific to board members, and this training will help you do just that for the AAAHC. You'll also want to go over any requirements training with them, which is inclusive of what like a site visit could look like, as well as some of the past findings and past recommendations that the regulatory agencies have also given. There should also be a policy breakdown for the high-level operations overview, what your organization template looks like, how often you guys review your policies, and again, which ones are pertinent to your board of directors. Any external trainings, for example, the AAAHC usually hosts a training in December. HRSA often hosts like a one-off, if you will, every now and then, so your board members can attend those, but you're able to share those. I did put AAAHC in here. That's the Arizona Association of Community Health Centers. So your local primary care associations will also provide an opportunity for your board members to join a local state primary care association training as well. So you should keep an eye on your state PCA. You also should have training on a site assessment. What does that look like? Again, there's that sharing of previous recommendations and findings, and then always keeping an eye on any corrective action plans and any quality improvement plans within your organizations. the regulatory entities will also take a peek at those with regard to their findings and recommendations at their last site visit or at their last survey site visit. You should also include a mock survey training, especially if you're preparing for the AAAHC, and the interview preparation for that AAAHC entrance and exit interview. And we'll go over that just a little bit further down in the presentation. So your board role as a board member is to actively participate in training, and then ask your UIO staff as well, you know, I'd like site assessment training. Can you provide that to me? So the UIOs will have all of these ready for you if you do want to inquire for additional training or additional information. Next slide, please. So for your board updates, I wanted to ask the group again, how are you as board members notified of any regulatory agency updates? The most recent example I can give is that the AAAHC had recently released some COVID-19 requirements in an email, as well as updating their manual too. So with that being said, how do you guys receive those updates? Do you guys get a notification from maybe the UIO quality director or manager? Do you guys talk about it at a board meeting? How are you all receiving those regulatory agency updates? And again, feel free to chime into the chat box, or you can come off of mute as well. And we'll just spend a couple of seconds here. And I'm just scanning the room to see if any other UIOs have also entered the room and see what board members are here. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come through, but again, a couple of you guys. Yes, yep, I will be going over the role of site visits in just a moment. Well, I do have a slide dedicated to that. Thank you so much for that, Kathleen. Diné says, we get updates from our organization's executive director and the quality assurance person. Perfect, that is great. That definitely is one way that we used to do it at Native Health as well, just notifying the board, especially at the board meetings, just so that we had everybody at the same time. So for the board updates, the UIO organization's role, of course, is to provide training resources and materials to board members, and maybe a top 5 takeaways notes. And so the top 5 takeaways is usually anytime you share notes on a meeting that was held, you have top 5 takeaways that your board members could just quickly glance over. They know exactly what that document is entailing, what the top 5 updates are being recommended by a regulatory agency as well. Thank you, Laura. Updates are received from the organization's CEO. Thank you so much for that. And then by that same token, the same courtesy regulation updates and changes should also be shared with your staff. So just ensuring that your quality department is connecting with all staff and not just with split divisions, because the AAAHC, when they come in, they will ask, you know, how do you know about this update? How do you know about this regulatory finding in terms of like that department's division? But we're going to go back into that site visit and what that looks like at a later time down further in the presentation. So your board of directors role when it comes to updates is to create a standing board of directors agenda item. So if you're able to put in on their AAAHC preparation updates, that's a great way to keep it on your radar. Just make sure that it's not out of sight, out of mind. The same thing with any regulatory updates, having that standing agenda item for state regulatory updates. And then also the site visit preparation can also fall under that standing agenda item. And then your corrective action plan check-in. So any corrective action plans that your team is working on, highly recommend that you keep that as a board of directors agenda item as well. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start getting into the board and standing committees pieces. So a couple of the UIOs that were present at the most recent Office of Urban Indian Health Programs site visit manual had mentioned how many standing committees that are required from OUIHP. The same sort of requirement is expected for the AAAHC, such as the Quality Improvement Committee. And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, Are you, as board members, given appropriate access to key health center staff to understand the key operations and metrics and areas of improvement within your organizations? And if that's a yes, if you could just place a yes into the chat box, that would be great, so we know who has an amazing standing committee structure. Thank you, Diné. So Diné and his team do have access to key health center staff to help understand the key metrics and operations and areas of improvement. Anybody else? Just going to give that a quick moment. And a part of the reason why we ask that is that the board role, board members should understand how to interpret the organizational dashboard and also help to strategize from a 30,000-foot level. And so are you, as board members and your standing committees, are you given also the access and support needed to actively participate in your committee assignments? That's a most, I guess, important field, is not only understanding what subcommittee you're on or standing committee you're on, but actually also being involved in some of the work that the Urban Indian organization is doing. Thank you, Laura, for that. That's a yes for her team. Anybody else that's also got access and great support from their UIO to participate in committee assignments? Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next bullet point for the board of directors role. So the reason for having all of this information and being active is just to ensure that you all, as board members, feel confident to make informed observations, ask questions, and provide effective feedback. So that with that being stated, are board committee meeting minutes organized? Are they clear? And do they keep a record of high-level board of directors decisions? Some of the requirements for the AAAHC does state that the strategic plan that the organization has in place does need to be approved by the board of directors, and they will look in your board of directors meeting minutes where it does state the board of directors has approved your strategic plan and some policies as well. So it's really important that your meeting minutes are very detailed and keep that high level record during that AAAHC site visit. Again, that alludes to the very last point, that any plans and policies are approved by the board are noted within that committee minutes. Next slide, please. So we're going to get into more of the meat and potatoes as to what the board of directors' true role is in the AAAHC site visit. So a couple of these items, this is the part where we're going to go over a general overview of what you as board members are expected to assist with. So you as board members are responsible for establishing the strategic direction and supporting the organization's accomplishments, the mission and vision, any organizational objectives. They do have to be approved within the last 2 years at the time of the AAAHC site visit. I did acknowledge the AAAHC chapter that it's in there. And just to kind of provide you with that nomenclature, that in parentheses AAAHC, that stands for Chapter 2, Subsection 1, Standard B, and then Strategies 1 through 3, essentially, is how that should read. So when you take a look at the AAAHC manual, everything is sectioned out very nicely. They're all labeled. So when your site visit surveyor comes on site, and they look at a policy, your policy should acknowledge the chapter in which that policy is supported by. So a part of the board's role as well is to formulate long-range plans. Again, there you'll see that strategic planning. You've got your operational and financial planning as well. You'll also need to ensure that your facilities and personnel are adequate and appropriate to carry out your organizational mission. This is inclusive of that credentialing and privileging process as well. You'll also be responsible for the authority, responsibility, and functions of officers and administrators elected, appointed, or employed to carry out governing body directives are clearly defined by the governing body. So again, that just states that you guys do oversee like the C-suite, the CEO, the executive director of that organization, that you are, providing those performance assessments of the CEO as well, and just understanding that the governing body does have some key oversight requirements that the AAAHC will be looking for. And again, there's that AAAHC standard source, if you will. Next slide, please. So the board of directors also has a role in overseeing and assisting with some operations and performance requirements. So just to note there again, the board of directors should be addressing and is fully and legally responsible, either directly or by appropriate delegation, for the operation and performance of the organization. So a part of those responsibilities and roles includes adopting policies and procedures for orderly organization conduct, including the organization's scope of clinical activities. You should also be establishing a system of financial management and accountability. You should also ensure fulfillment of obligations under prevailing laws and regulations. And you should also ensure that you oversee compliance with applicable AAAHC, HRSA, CARF, and OUIHP standards as well. Next slide, please. And now we move into the clinical operations and performance requirements as previously mentioned. And here's where the board of directors role comes into play. So you're responsible for employment or contracting of health professionals. Again, that's more of the higher level providers, medical directors, that is inclusive of that credentialing and privileging process that the organization does have. You're also responsible for maintaining that patient rights and responsibilities policy. Your patient rights and responsibilities should also be displayed somewhere in your patient lobby, patient waiting areas very clearly. And also that includes ensuring quality of care is evaluated and that identified problems are addressed. So the AAAHC and some of the other entities will ask for a patient satisfaction survey that is completed annually. They'll also ask if you have some quality improvement studies that have been completed by the board of directors. You'll also want to make sure that the risk management program is inclusive of risk management strategies and activities, and then also overseeing the infection control and safety programs to ensure a safe environment of care. You also want to maintain patient education and continuing education for staff policies. And you also want to make sure, again, you oversee that credentialing and privileging process. Next slide, please. Some of the board finance requirements is that you are responsible for ensuring that the health center is financially stable and are operating in accordance with applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations, as well as establishing your own policies and procedures. The board of directors is also responsible for overseeing the annual budget and taking a look at the long-term capital expenditure plan if required. So those are some elements from the IHS OUIHP manual that falls underneath the governance requirements section. The health center governing board should also provide direction for long-range planning, and it's not limited to identifying health center priorities, but also adopting a 3-year plan for financial management and capital expenditures. Next slide, please. So here's a copy of some of the annual review requirements, again, that the board of directors is responsible for. As mentioned, the patient rights, any delegated administrative responsibilities, overseeing key programs, which include quality management and improvement, the infection prevention, control, and safety, some policies, or I should say all policies and procedures, the appointment and reappointment processes, scope of procedures performed, and services provided, and any revisions that are needed to maintain compliance. Next slide, please. So here's a copy of the OUIHP AAAHC site visit assessment Excel spreadsheet. So we do have a copy of this to share with you all as well, and we can go ahead and put it into our resources section once we put up our slide deck, as well as the recording of this training. So the IHS offers a great site assessment tool that your site can use. They also have some great recommendations for your facility to glean from the site visit assessment. And you also should be mindful to factor in any recommendations and findings as well. So it's a great way to see where your organization is currently at if you're seeking AAAHC accreditation for the very first time. Next slide, please. So I want to just briefly go over some mock site visits. They're a great way to experience a practice site, or to experience and practice a site visit. So you want to treat them like the real thing. If you're able to hire an external evaluator, please do. Some other benefits of a mock site visit include having somebody with an unbiased opinion come in, and they can ask you guys some of the tough questions, and vice versa. You as board of directors can ask the mock site visit surveyor, why would AAAHC do this? What are some of the questions that they're going to be asked? You guys can also role play, because sometimes the AAAHC surveyor will go into interview with you and they'll ask you some questions about what did your most recent QI study look like? What were the findings? And so you have that opportunity to role play. It also helps to ensure that your departments are communicating and sharing the exact same message. It also helps that you're going to be able to identify areas of opportunity. And it also allows for some fresh resolutions from all parties. So let's say there might be a finding in maybe the dental operatory and a policy needed to be updated. Now that you're fully staffed, now that you've got an amazing new dental director, you could have a fresh policy change or update come in from that updated team as well. So it's a great way for everybody to come together and try and provide ideas and resolutions to update and improve areas of opportunity. And again, your board role is that's going to be your time to practice. Next slide, please. So the site visit timeline is inclusive. About 3 months in advance of the site visit, your notices will come through from the AAAHC. They'll say, we'd like to come on site, and they'll notify your C-suite and your key staff. And I want to just stress here that you should refresh early and often, reviewing any manual sections, performing that self-assess current performance, continue updating your policies, procedures, and plans. And so that's one I cannot stress enough. You should be updating your policies and procedures and plans all the time, especially those that are listed in that annual review. About 1 month in advance of the site visit, you should have all of your documents prepared, reviewing them, updating them, approving any pertinent policies that might need final approval before the AAAHC survey team comes on site. You'll have your planning call with the survey team. The entrance and exit interviews are planned at that time as well. 2 weeks before the site visit, you'll have your site visit agenda disseminated to key staff and to you all, and then the site visit occurs. Usually it lasts about 3 days, and then you should plan a debrief with some of your key staff. Next slide, please. So during the site visit, the board of directors role, you just want to make sure you have the correct agenda item, and you want to protect the time, because the AAAHC folks will come in and they'll want to interview you all during set time. So you can be available for the entrance, just the welcome, and then they'll break off into their survey timeframes. And then the board of directors usually has a set aside time with a surveyor to answer some questions. And then the exit meetings, you're also able to attend those as well. But you definitely want to create a command center. This is for the UIO staff, where the board of directors members can call, can come and visit if they need a refresher on a policy, where they can kind of prep. So you want to make sure you have that command center in place to where there's like a drop-in availability for UIO center staff to help the board of directors members prep. So anytime the surveyors come on site, you want to stay open and do not argue. That's one of the I guess AAAHC also mentions this in their AAAHC training, is just know that the AAAHC is there as a learning organization. So they're not there to, throw sanctions on anybody. They just want to show you how to improve your organizations. So again, the board role, attend the entrance and exit meetings, and then participate in the key staff interview. Next slide, please. This is one that I want to just quickly touch on and just make it very clear that recommendations, there's a difference between recommendations and findings. Recommendations are only suggestions made by the regulatory agency for the organization. A finding, however, is a required update that the organization must make in order to be found in compliance. So again, I just wanted to point those two out. So again, keep those as a standing board of directors meeting agenda, but also keep in mind when you're talking to your AAAHC surveyor, just some unique things about our UI organizations when you're talking to them. So some OUHP standards supersede other regulatory agency requirements. For example, the AAAHC has a governance section about the board of directors makeup, and so does HRSA. But the the OUIHP governance makeup will supersede those governance requirements of the board composition. So just a quick note on that. We also talked to our surveyor about the American Indian and Alaska Native population. So we know that our population has high diabetes rates. And so when we start talking to, let's say HRSA, for example, about why our diabetes rates are so high, it's because it's just our population makeup. So you can let the surveyor know, remind them that we're not like any other, just general healthcare facility. You also want to mention any external impacts. We all know that RPMS is not the best system for coordination of care, but some of our UIOs are on commercial systems. So just explaining that to your surveyor is also a great way to ensure that you do have that uniqueness shine through. But you just want to let your surveyor gracefully know. Next slide, please. I just briefly want to go over this section. As I'd mentioned before, the AAAHC had added some new COVID preparation items in here. They have included the emergency preparedness plan. They do want a thorough review of the written emergency preparedness plan and ensure that it addresses internal and external threats. The infection control risk assessment should be very comprehensive and includes evaluations of the equipment and staff training. That's going to be very huge. They'll also want to take a look at your patient screening and patient scheduling and pre-screening as well. So you should find out how you plan to assess your patients prior to entering your system and your facility building as well. So your board role is to make sure you review all of these plans and also approve them. Next slide, please. I wanted to just bring your attention to two different definitions here for the isolation. So just understanding that the isolation is needed to prevent a spike in cases and avoid overwhelming hospitals and health centers. So again, just focusing on that transmission-based precautions, patient monitoring and placement, and environmental cleaning, which should be included in your infection prevention and control plan. The informed definition as well, just as a cross-infection prevention measure, they would like you to establish an internal system to track anybody under investigation. So that's where your contact tracing programs will come into play. So again, just knowing that your patients are nicely separated and knowing that you guys do have an amazing COVID-19 contact tracing plan or team in place as well. Next slide, please. Policy preparation, this one's going to be a huge one. So the recommendations and findings will often come when your surveyors review your policies. I can't stress this enough as well. A lot of the recommendations will come in how your policies are written. So the AAAHC surveyor will come on site and they will ask you all some questions about, hey, so your policy says in your patient referral, you guys do this within 30 days. And let's say they interview you and you're like, I think we do it in 60. They will provide you with a recommendation and possibly a finding. And so they're going to let you know you need to ensure that you do exactly what your policies say you do. In addition to not only you knowing, they will also audit some of your charts as well. So if they do see that your referrals aren't happening within that 30-day time frame, that's when they usually turn it into a finding. And so they'll do a set number, a set percentage, and say, okay, well, we found about 30% of these referrals aren't happening within that 30-day time frame. So you just want to be very mindful that all of your care teams are meeting and doing what your policies say you do. So as the board of directors, again, your role is to help to set that policy, and also you're responsible for the organization knowing what those policies say, or helping, I should say, the organization stay accountable for that. You'll also provide oversight, insight, and foresight for the policies. You'll also assess for risk and compliance. And you also should ensure that for the not within scope pieces, just know that a part of the board of directors knows is you're not involved in the daily operations of that particular department or staffing as well. So you want to make sure that you're also not engaging in the micromanagement of management. So let's say a medical director or maybe a staff member is maybe having a hard time attending work on time. That is out of scope. So that is not within your purview. So just ensuring that your role is just to ensure that the policies are being upheld by key center staff and C-suite. You should brush up on some of the governance procedures prior to the site visit as well. Next slide, please. I would recommend that you do use a consent agenda for your policy review, because if you're like Native Health, policies used to come to our board members and it'd be about 30 policies at one time. And so in order to avoid that, they would go ahead and create a policy calendar, which I can go ahead and share a copy of that with you too in just a moment. We can put that in the resources actually. But a consent agenda allows you to do perform routine business and get reports into one agenda item. And that's usually sent out in advance as well, so that you guys do have time to review those, and then in one swift action, approve any policies that are up for renewal, as well as any annual plans as well. So it also helps with transparency and accountability when you use that consent agenda. All board members do have the responsibility for making sure that that consent agenda items are distributed in enough time to review them prior to the meeting. Each board member also has the responsibility to read and review the consent agenda items and address any concerns prior to that meeting. So that way everybody's edits have been done and that the people who are in the room at that time can answer any questions. Next slide, please. I do want to shift gears here. So there's that calendar that I'd mentioned, the policy calendar. So at Native Health, what we did is we sectioned out our administrative policies. So we had chunked those out and reviewed those during Q4. We also took some time out in Q1 of 2022 to also review them. And then we curated some space for the clinical policies to be reviewed during Q2, Q3, and Q4 of 2022. Same thing with dental, 2023. And the reason why they're split out this way is because the AAAHC does require that each policy be reviewed once every 3 years. But keep in mind, the asterisk there would be there are some policies that do need to be reviewed annually. I also do have a chart that I can provide to you all as resources that are currently within that 2022 timeframe and scope. So just know that the annual policies do need to be reviewed annually. Everything else that's not noted would be need to be reviewed once every 3 years. So just keep track of all of your policies. I would recommend that you have a policy tracker. If you could buy some a policy software, please do. And also try and create naming conventions to where you are able to know which ones are all admin policies, which ones are all clinical policies as well. And then also using this policy calendar. Next slide, please. Here's where I wanted to shift gears. So the AAAHC is a huge proponent of having an effective quality program. That's quality improvement and quality assurance. I'm not going to read that chapter 5 item there, but just know that they do look very closely at your quality improvement and assurance programs. Next slide, please. One of the major facets of this is your QI studies. So the AAAHC does have a requirement that your QI studies do consist of 10 elements. Your purpose of your study, IDing your performance measures, goals, and objectives, describing your data to evaluate and analyze, the evidence of your data collection, performing your data analysis, comparing your current performance versus your previous performance, implementation of any corrective actions, and then remeasuring the problem objectively. And if you need to insert another plan, do, study, act method, where let's say you weren't able to correct the problem fully, you would implement another trial, test run with your new strategies, new ideas in there, find out if that takes you to that percentage goal that you want to. Again, let's say you're screening maybe 18% of your 45 and over population for colon cancer, but you need to be at 35. You would perform that QI study to say, what can we do to get our 45-year-olds and on into our colon cancer screening? How can we screen them more effectively? So that could be one example of a QI study, but you would keep, injecting new strategies and new interventions once you hit that kind of national benchmark of that 38% marker. The board role in all of this is that number 10. Communicating your results. Your urban Indian organization should be providing you with these results in this format explaining what those findings were to you and also to the rest of their staff. Next slide, please. And this is going to be the last slide before we move into our Jeopardy game. But we do have the quality improvement study form from Native Health. One of the key elements that I want to draw your attention to as it pertains to the AAAHC as well is that they do have 4 areas of requirements. And I'm trying to see this here. Let me see if I can pull it up on my end. But there's a section underneath that chart where it says QI study title, department, contact, review period. There's 5 boxes that are listed there that the AAAHC does look at. So they will want to see 1 QI study completed within each of these 5 sections. So you will need to have a QI study that focuses on patient-provider relationship. You will need to have 1 QI completed study in continuity of care, 1 QI completed study for a clinical study, 1 QI completed study for accessibility to care, 1 completed QI study for comprehensiveness of care. So in total, you should have 5 QI studies to present to the AAAHC at the time of your site visit. So just keep that in mind. The 10 elements are also placed on this QI study as well to give you all that opportunity to review these during your board of directors meetings. So these should be signed by your QI chairperson. And then in your board of directors meeting minutes, it also should be reflected that this particular QI study has been approved by the board of directors as well. So the AAAHC will also take a peek at that. Outside of that, I believe we will be moving into our next element of this particular discussion, which is the Jeopardy game. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Divya.
Awesome. Thank you, Zep. So yes, thank you for the awesome stop on the path of achievement. So let's place an applause emoji in the chat to show our appreciation. So I will be taking over the screen. All right. Let me share my screen, share sound. Here we go. So let's play Jeopardy. All right. All right. So here we go. So in playing Jeopardy, you have an opportunity to earn some prize or earn a wonderful mug if you get the most points. So we're going to make sure that, we're getting points here. So around to make sure you get this mug. So please participate and we'll move through. All right. All right, so here's how to play. Participants will be asked to place a designated number in the chat box. The first person to type that number will be asked to pick a question and have a chance to earn points. Other participants will be able to enter their answers into the chat box simultaneously while that designated participant is determining their answer. If the chosen participant states the wrong answer, the first person with the correct answer in the chat box will gain the points. We will repeat these steps until we get to Final Jeopardy, and the participant with the most points at the end of the Jeopardy game will get an amazing Nikui swag prize as shown at the beginning. So the winner will be asked to provide Nikui with their email address to follow up and help ship off their gift. All right, do we have any questions in the chat before we get about the gameplay?
No questions.
Thank you, Molly. All right, so our first number that we were going to be putting in the chat is 41 for the 41 UIOs. So get those numbers in the chat box. 41, 41, 41. Who's going to be first? All right, Donis, I just saw your number first, so thank you. Which question would you like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can come off of mute as well. Q1. Thank you. All right, so let's go to Q1. Name 2 elements of the Board of Directors AAAHC preparation training.
And if it helps, this is what I've gone over. This is what your Board of Directors training should include.
All right. Any answers in the chat? Okay. Well, if not, we're going to move on to the answer. Going once, going twice. So you could have chosen any of these options: manuals, overview, requirements, training, policy breakdown, external training, and above. So any of those would have sufficed, but thank you so much for putting your number and choice in the chat. We'll go back to home. And now our next number is 22. Oh, no worries. That's why we have more opportunities. All right, our next number is 22 for the states where UIO programs exist. So 22 in the chat. 22, 22. Oh, Laura, all right. So you get to choose Q2 through 5. Q4, all right, let's go to Q4. These are only suggestions that are made by the regulatory agency to the organization. Which is what? What are they? All right. Let's see if your answer is correct. 100 points to you. Yay. Awesome.
Good job, Laura.
Awesome. Let's go back to home. All right. All right. Next number in the chat is what were you? 70. 70 for the 70% of AIAN populations living in urban areas. So 70 in the chat, 70 in the chat. I feel like one of those what is it? Those I can't remember what they are, but 70 in the chat, 70 in the chat.
An auctioneer.
There you go, auctioneer. Who will put their 70 in the chat or shout it out? 70. All right, Laura, you're up next. All right, so we have, you got Q4, so we have 2, 3, and 5 left. 3. All right, let's go to 3. How far in advance should you review your policies? Okay. All right, we have 2 months and 3 months, so let's see what the answer is. Oh, trick question. All the time.
Yes, and this is where that comment that I'd made about if you wait about 3 months, your board of directors is going to be reviewing about 80 policies in that monthly board of directors session. So you want to make sure you split it out all the time, just in different and using that policy calendar.
Awesome. Well, good attempt, but we have a couple more questions to go as well. So our next round is 924. So the Nikui address, 924 Pennsylvania Avenue. So now you know where Nikui is. All right, 924 in the chat. All right, 924 in the chat. Oh, all right, Jonas. Pick your, I think our remaining is 3 and 5. Q5, all right. How many elements are in the AAAHC Quality Improvement Framework?
Good answer, good answer.
All right, so Laura gets these points. All right, so let's go back to our last questions. Okay, so the last round is 65. So 65,000 AIAN populations or people are served per year on average. So 65, let's go to 65 for our last question. 65 in the chat. Well, I'll just go ahead and open it since it's our last one. Never mind, but you can go ahead and put your 65 just to represent. All right, how many elements are in the AAAHC? Oops, did I do that one? My bad. We already did it. My bad, it was 3.
It was number 3.
It was 3. Whoops, how far in advance should, no.
Number 4.
It was 2. Name one benefit. There it is. Name one benefit of a mock site visit assessment. All right, so we have practice, practice, practice. Yes. So Laura got it, and then knowing what to expect as well. So we'll go back to our final Jeopardy question, and then we'll move into our break. All right, let's go back. Final Jeopardy.
And let's preface this though, Diné, because I think not Molly, I'm sorry, Laura's at $300. So you've got tiebreaker, $100 for that last round. So final Jeopardy's worth, what is it? Did we say $200?
It was 101.
Oh, darn.
We can change it to 200. It's fine. All
There could be a
right.
possibility to steal or tie.
There we go. All right. Final Jeopardy.
Answer, daily double.
What does PATH stand for?
Is the music playing?
We're gonna give some silence to think and ruminate. Why are we here?
I've seen that acronym somewhere.
Think. I feel like I should be Winnie the Pooh.
Hey!
Hey, we got it. All right. What does PATH stand for?
We have a winner.
All right. So we're going to tally up our points and see who our winner is. Sabu.
We're going to the judges.
Going to our panel of points. Yeah, congratulations. And thank you all for participating. But as we're tallying, we're going to be moving into our break as well. But if you have any questions for Zep on her wonderful presentation, please feel free to ask those as well. And we can always come back to the winner at the end if needed.
Yay, congratulations, Laura.
Oh, Laura is the winner. Woohoo. All right. So NCUE staff will be on standby for your email address so we can reach out to you for that. In the meantime, we'll be going into our break. So we'll be back at, let's say 3:02, just to give everybody some that full 10 minutes to recoup, and we'll see you then.